Hi everybody, Ruben Dryblad here, Editor-in-Chief at Favio. It's great to be with you once again. Our product Essentials curates the news for you so you don't have to. Now today I'll be talking about one of the subtopics from our larger AI family of topics. And that subtopic today is AI ethics. So we'll take a little click right in there and jump over to the report from 2019. So before we look directly at the annual report on AI ethics from 2019, I'd like to just give a little background on the AI ethics and sort of where we have come from and where we are now. And I was a philosophy major in undergrad, so the idea of AI ethics and the implications of it has been interesting to me for a while, and it's been fun to read up about what's been going on lately, what people have been thinking about, and comparing it to some of the older questions and some of the older philosophers who posited about this long times ago. So one of those people is René Descartes, who's considered to be one of the original philosophers of the sub-modern age. Now, Descartes said in 1637 that the mark of intelligence is the ability to understand language, and machines can never do that. Now, fast forward 3.5 centuries, we have a bit of a different story. Now, natural language processing and Watson by IBM have shown us that indeed machines can respond to human conversation after analyzing and comparing to past speech. So that would make it seem as if machines can think. Now, we'll see that that's not exactly the full story. And in 1950, Alan Turing, who was a British mathematician, had a similar question: can a machine think? So he developed what's known as the Turing Test. And I'll read a little bit about the Turing Test from a book of mine that I enjoy quite a bit called Problems from Philosophy. Now, this is the 3rd edition of the book, something I received while I was an undergrad, and it's a very useful handbook on some of these sort of baseline issues and sort of the original people who were considering it and coming up with real concepts and ideas about machines and their thought processes and if they could think and what that would look like, because this was, of course, well before any machines like IBM's Watson or Eliza or even close to being created. So, Turing had a hunch, though, and he would really be proven to be right. So the Turing test is an interesting test, and I'll read from the book, as I said, but you can note that the basic idea of the Turing test is this: 2 humans and a computer, and you put them all in different rooms and allow them to communicate only with typed messages. And the idea is for one of the humans, the interrogator, to ask questions of the 2 and figure out which one is the computer and which one is not. Now, he can try to trip up the computer any way possible, and the computer will always deny that it's a machine. So, to this day, the Turing test remains out of reach. No modern-day computer, as far as I know, maybe something's happening right now that I'm unaware of, but no modern-day computer has come close to passing the Turing test. Now, there's some issues with the Turing test, and this ties us back into the annual report, actually. So, one of the issues with the Turing test is that it is an application of behaviorism, which is a discredited theory of epistemology. Behaviorism believes that mental concepts such as thinking and understanding refer to behavioral dispositions. Now, Turing's idea was that computers must have certain mental states if they are disposed to respond to human speech in certain ways. Behaviorism is an expression of mental states, but it's not exactly identical with them. So, as we can see, one of the issues with this is that a zombie, perhaps, could behave like a person, but actually be mindless. So that's one hole in the Turing test, is that it's based on a misunderstood analysis of computers and what it really means to think. And that was more specifically opposed in John Searle's Chinese room argument. So the Chinese room argument is famous, and I'm not going to jump into the whole thing on it now. I'll leave some links down below so you can read up on it, but the Chinese room argument comes down to the fact of syntax and semantics, which is, it's one thing to put in numbers and come out with different numbers and, be told 3 plus 3 and spit out 6 and be like, oh, it's thinking. But that doesn't quite mean that they understand what 6 is. And that's what semantics are. And when we think about the mind, it's much more about understanding what we're saying than simply saying the right thing. So that's one of the issues that we had back in the day. Back in the day, I say, 1950, not so long ago, and Searle's argument and rebuttal was in 1980. So this is still modern day history, but it's it's been an issue for a while now about what it really means to think. And we jump back into the annual report, we see that these conversations are still being had. This is a really fantastic YouTube video with John Searle, who I was just mentioning, of the Chinese room argument, talking with a modern day philosopher, Luciano Floridi. Now, Floridi actually has 2 articles in this annual report, and it's interesting to hear the way of that he talks about AI ethics. His analysis is far less about, will we turn into slaves to Google, or will uh, will robots eventually take over as full-fledged humans. He's less concerned with that. He's more concerned with the day-to-day policy and the data and how is this all being managed, which I think is an interesting angle, and I think is probably more apt for discussion these days, as that's really something that's happening right now. We're not so close. We're closer than we were back in Turing's time, but we're still not so close to AI really mimicking human intelligence. But we are certainly close, and we're at the tipping point of incredible amounts of data being held by certain companies that is rather dangerous. So here we have a question that he was asked on sort of monopoly on AI, and what we should worry about. And I'll let you read the article for yourself, but it does come down to better policy, and that's really what he's been pushing for. He wants us to be thinking about it on a more practical and logistical level, which I think is important. And we see some other hints towards this in the annual report about sort of the convenience factor. How we've basically given all of our data and power away, and it's concerning when only a few companies are in charge of that. So we have a lot to think about in this upcoming decade, in this upcoming era, and there's certainly a lot at stake, and philosophy still plays a big role. I mean, I'll mention one more thing before we go, but autonomous vehicles, right? The issue of the trolley problem, which is a famous philosophical thought experiment where a train is barreling down the tracks, and you have an opportunity to change the train's path so that it just runs over one person as opposed to 6. But how are you supposed to make that ethical judgment? And when we think about autonomous vehicles, how will a vehicle make that judgment? It's a judgment that trips up humans to this day. There isn't really a right answer. So do we want cars to just be flipping a coin? How will we make that ethical assumption into a car? How will a car be intelligent enough to decide for itself? Or will it possibly, hopefully, come up with a solution to the trolley problem? Maybe there is something that we as humans haven't thought about yet. But as of right now, we're not there. That's all for me, Ruben Dreiblatt here from Essentials. It's been a pleasure talking a little bit about the AI Ethics Annual Report and a lot of bit about philosophy. Philosophy is as relevant as it has always been, which is something that Floridi talks about. So please, 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 if you're interested in AI ethics, educate yourself a little bit on philosophy. Read up a little bit about some of the very smart and intellectual people who've been thinking about this for a long time, and you can see the thread that runs through to the modern day. I'll see you at the next video.